Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be talking, it's going to be quite a long Instagram Live today because I'm going to be talking all about medication because it's a subject that I wanted to go into in more detail because I think it's often missed. And there's loads of things in the medication sort of part of OCD and anxiety disorders that doesn't get covered. And I just thought we need to really look at those because they're such important parts. So let's look at medication in general. Now, when you're on social media, like I am with what I do here, it's very easy to think that it's very easy to write things in a way that people want to hear, write things in a way that appeal to one audience, write things in a way that that sort of people tend to write to an audience, and in terms of they write to their own beliefs. Now, things aren't as simplistic as that. Let me give you an example. If I wrote on my page about get under your fears, sort anxiety out, eat healthy, exercise, get off meds as quick as you can, lots of sort of negative stuff about meds, that appealed to a lot of people. That would appeal to a lot of people. A lot of people would be like, oh yeah, I hated meds as well. There'd be loads of comments. Oh, I hated meds. Meds ruined my life. Since I've been juicing and exercising and that, I feel a lot better. Understandably, there's a lot of people that would say that. Now, if I also wrote a lot about the benefits of meds and primarily focused on that, what would happen is people would say to me, great, you're breaking the stigma on meds. Great that you're really covering this topic in detail like it's needed. Meds have been really helpful for me. And things would sort of move into that direction. Now, what tends to happen there is social media accounts or any sort of people that are speakers on certain topics will have the audience that they're speaking to is their audience because of the things they say. You're obviously going to find, say, a left-wing politician's audience is going to be primarily left. A right-wing politician's audience is going to be primarily right. Well, when you're talking about things where, like anxiety disorders and so on, and especially as we're coming from a rational position on things, we want to be looking at all the points. We're not taking one angle. We are looking at all the points so that it's giving people the best opportunity for getting better. Now, let's look at that. Let's look at with medication. Okay, so over the years, I've worked with thousands of people with OCD and generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. And when you look at people's stories and their situations that they're in, it's very easy to look at a lot of them and think, yeah, that person was put on meds too quickly, that person needs to come off, and you can oversimplify it, okay? And things aren't simplistic like that. Let's look at medication in general, what I've seen with medication. This part is a simplistic statement. For many people, medication is a complete life changer. For many other people, it makes no difference much at all. For another group of people, it has more problems with side effects and is more of a hindrance to them, and they really look forward to getting off them. Now, let's look at the stigmas that people aren't even aware of that they are holding about them. Okay. In my life, have I taken meds? No. Have I taken them for a day? Yes. Why? When I developed generalized anxiety disorder, I took one med, which was amitriptyline, for headaches. I didn't know when to take it. I took it at night. I was driving home and I nearly fell asleep. That was badly done by myself. Wasn't really advised well at the time. I got so frustrated I never ever took it again. Okay. Now, if I took my position and my belief there, I could easily have gone, meds were terrible. Well, they weren't. It's just because I took them at a wrong time and hadn't got used to them, right? Now, the second thing is the stigma around medication. Okay, so what happens is this. We hold stigma around meds even when we don't think we do. Even people who say they don't hold stigma against it still to some degree often think, I'm a bit weak because I'm still on meds, I should have got off them by now, I'm not fully there yet if I'm still on them. This is where a lot of problems occur. Over the years, I've seen people with severe OCD and anxiety, and like generalized anxiety, right? Go on meds, work on themselves, get to a point where they come off meds completely, fine. I see some people that got in a really bad part, didn't really need the meds, got more stable, came off the meds, or they just went on them in a sort of real panic when they couldn't sleep or something like that. Right, okay. For a lot of people, they will be able to come off meds quite quickly once they're feeling better. And for a lot of people, they will be able to reduce and go down to a low dose. But there are also a large number of people that suffer from physical anxiety symptoms, or find that when they're on no meds at all, that they're more easily going into the intrusive thought cycle and more stuck with anxiety, so stay on a low dose of meds. There is nothing wrong with that. This is one of the problems. People view it like a competition where there's a medal at the end. Oh, if you just get under all your fears completely, then you can be off all meds, you're completely fine, then you've won. No. There are plenty of people that are very, very smart in terms of studied a lot on OCD, done a lot of work on themselves, had loads of therapy, done loads of exposures, that has still suffered intrusive thought cycles coming on, getting stuck on a few sticky thoughts that they can't find an exposure for, and then they've taken a low dose of meds and it's reduced that so they're functioning so much better. Who bloody cares? If they're living well and they're functioning well, that is all that matters. That is the main thing. But the problem occurs is because people are like, I've got to get to that point where it's all gone. Yes, if you're under that fear, yes, and you're really got to a place where you can accept it all, and you're in that position, that still doesn't mean you're not going to get stuck. Say, for example, today, something happened like, I don't know, I got COVID and I had to go into hospital with it. I can't guarantee, I think I'd be pretty rational, but I can't guarantee I would. Because I'm not a robot. Although it might seem like that when people listen to me speaking, I can't guarantee that. Nobody can. Nobody can say that. I can't guarantee if someone broke into the house here and tried to attack me that I wouldn't necessarily completely lose it and try and kill them. I can't guarantee that wouldn't happen because you're a human and you're not going to be fully in control of all emotions and know all your responses in different situations. It doesn't work like that. I've met some people that have been incredibly rational, that are rational in all areas of life, but then they struggle with some area where they might be putting themselves down in one area and that they notice it's like a habit and they still get caught in that. That's okay. This is not a competition. Okay, it's not a competition. The goal is to just be feeling overall a lot better. That's the goal. Okay, so when I'm talking about meds here, is people view it as like there's the stigmas, and there's stigmas in the process of going on the meds as well. So let's look at that position. Let's take somebody who's not been on meds and is quite new to getting better from OCD, and let's take a look at somebody who's further along the line. Somebody who's new would go to their doctor and might not necessarily feel a stigma about it, but they might as well, because admitting mental health problems, there may still be a stigma and they think, oh God, I don't want them to view me as weird. When they walk in that GP surgery and they sit in front of the GP, they're thinking, God, he's looking at me. I look like a nice person. I look like I've got my stuff together. Oh my God, he's going to think I'm mental. Oh God, he's just prescribed me medication. Now I really am ill. Now I'm going to the pharmacy. God, what must they think when I give them this prescription? Oh God, she's looking at me. She must think I've really lost the plot and I'm really, oh God, how's this got to this? Okay, now each day I'm taking this tablet. Oh my God, how have I got to this point? I'm someone taking tablets. Now, even if the person breaks that stigma down, they still on some level often feel those things. Now let's take someone further along the journey. They've been doing great. They're nowhere near as bad as they were, but they're still experiencing some physical symptoms that are kind of niggling. They're experiencing some OCD thoughts they're finding hard to get an exposure for. They've decided to take some meds to help them with sleeping, with maybe feelings of fatigue, whatever. They go in, they're thinking in their head, God, how have I got to a point that I'm going on meds at this point? Other people I know in my position aren't doing that. I must be so bad. I must be worse than ever. Oh God, and now I'm having to take meds. I'm going to be on these for life. I'm never going to get off these. This is going to be my life forever. Now, the thing with all these things, one second. The thing with all these things is very hard. It's very, very hard to feel what they feel like till you're in that position. Now, I haven't suffered really with OCD for a long time, so it's hard for me to remember it often. But because I'm working around it all the time, I see it so much with the people I work with. But it's very difficult to remember some of these things. But when I really think about it, or someone's telling me their story, I can see it. Do you know how many stories I hear like this? I've worked this all the time. Every day I hear this. I've worked so hard on my recovery, Rob. I'm doing so well. I feel like such a loser having to go back to take meds now. Like, I've never taken meds, but like it's really interrupting my sleep, and like I'm waking up intermittently, and like I don't know what to do at the moment. And then I say, well, you should speak to your GP about going on a low dose of meds. But Rob, I shouldn't at this point. I shouldn't be doing that. Why not? Why can't you do that? There are some great people who speak on anxiety with such great knowledge that take a low dose of meds. There's no problem in that. I've spoken to those people and I say to them, have you ever considered coming off on a low dose, but not pushing them, because it's your personal choice and whatever makes them feel happy and content is fine. There's no rush. Who cares? You don't have to. Long-term goal, it's better to be on no meds. We'd prefer to be. We don't have to be off them. And I said to him, why don't you come off, go on a low dose of meds? Come off the meds. Why don't you try that at this point? Speak to your doctor and try that. They say, do you know what? I feel good enough. Overall, I feel good. I tend to get bumpy whenever I come off them. So why not stay on them? Who cares? There's no judgment on it. Who cares? Doesn't matter. And you've only got to look at a lot of people that you think are very sort of remarkable characters and see their own stories, and you see that it's not as simple as you think it is. If you look at the likes of Jordan Peterson, whether you like him or not, he's obviously a very intelligent guy. Had a serious problem with Benzos last year and nearly died. He's a guy who really thinks about his thinking, really tries to be calm and all of those things. If he ended up in a position addicted on Benzos, it can happen to anyone. That's got nothing to relation to intelligence. It's got nothing to do with that. We think it does. We think, oh, it's because I'm weak, or it's because I haven't thought that. It's got nothing to do with that. If he can end up on Benzos, and I think he was in a coma as well, and all kinds of things, because when his wife got ill, it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter about the things about intelligence and how smart somebody is. I've met top TED speakers that are hugely respected, very quiet about wanting to let anyone know they're on meds. And I said, well, why did you take meds? They said, well, I've got clinical depression in the family. And if I don't take them, I start to feel very low. I didn't get into all the reasons behind their thinking and what they were thinking, their beliefs. But if they take meds, why not? If they're feeling all right and they're feeling good, who cares? And that's important. It's important to notice those stigmas, because there's a great pressure that people put on themselves to get off things when they're doing well. And then they rush themselves too much. There's a great rush to get on them when people are stuck, understandably because they're feeling very bad. But then they often rush themselves too hard to get off them. There was a girl I was working with the other day who posted her story, Josie, and she posted on it this week on our Instagram stories. And she was so grateful to get off meds. She's been on meds since she was 14 on a high dose. And she feels great. That's okay. But it's not the same for everyone. Let me explain. With OCD, you'll get some people that when it's latched and it's on, they feel so bad locked, but they still sleep well, they still have energy, they still feel fine. That is okay. There's no need for them to go necessarily on meds because they're feeling all right overall, but they just feel bumpy when it's caught like that. But there are other people that if they didn't have meds, it would be so bloody hard. I work with some people that are waking up 20 times a night, that barely get proper sleep, can barely eat. They're going to need meds. They're going to be so worn out and not have the energy. It's going to be so hard to work on recovery. different brains are different, genetically different. Once you've got other things in the mix, generalized anxiety disorder, they've got a lot of physical symptoms, they've got a lot of sleep disturbances, insomnia, all things like that. You want to take the edge off. Meds don't tend to be a cure by any means, not cure, but they can work sometimes very well. I mean, sometimes I'll work with a guy who'll be in sort of seeing, most people I see once a week. I don't tend to see many people more than once a week. But sometimes someone will come in and they'll be in a very bad way and they'll say to me, Rob, I want you to come and work with me wherever I don't do in-home. I don't work with people in-home anymore. I do most of it all via Skype because of the number of people that I work with. It's not possible to do that anymore. But I used to travel to places and someone would say to me, look, Rob, I'm in America. I've got such bad OCD. I need you to come and work with me for a week intensively. And I'd fly over there and I'd go and work with them. And then often I would see cases of people that had never taken any meds and they were in such a bad way and they'd done so much work and then they take meds and then they completely felt good enough and then they went off for years and I saw them once every 3 months after seeing them sort of 3 times a week. That happens. Some people it works incredibly well for. Other people it doesn't work so great for. It's mixed. But there's a lot of those stories, a lot of people that fight so much with me. No, I don't want to speak to my doctor about meds. That's the last thing I want. Oh, they'll make you a zombie and all of this stuff. And then when they actually go on the meds, they feel 100 times better. And they think, God, do you remember how much I didn't want didn't want to go on those meds? And so that is so important to see that and to hear those stories. Because people, what happens is people go on, say, a med that they have a bad reaction to, never ever try another med, and write off all meds altogether, and that's not a good thing. Another thing that people do is people always want to try natural stuff over meds, understandably, but you get to a point where it's all right saying exercise and healthy eating is very beneficial. Of course it is. But sometimes someone will come in, they're completely drained, tired, they can't sleep properly. They could exercise 3 hours a day and eat healthily all day. They wouldn't feel, without the meds, it's very, very difficult for them. Okay? They couldn't exercise that much. How can you exercise that much when you already haven't slept? Okay? It's not easy. It's not easy for them, and they get into that cycle of just sort of thinking, God, I should do this naturally. I must try more supplements. It doesn't matter. You can try all the magnesium and all the eating at the right times and the healthiest food and working out loads and try to really nice, comfortable sleeping routine and not too much work. Often it's not the case. Meds are helpful and meds are needed. And look, I at the moment, as I've spoken on here, I'm very behind the work that's going into in the future for a medically approved psychedelic therapy, and I think that will be a big game changer. And in the future, I don't advise it now by any means, but I am also I'm 100% behind medication, SSRIs, SNRIs when needed, because they do help a huge number of people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be recommended. And too many places sort of write them off as bad. They wouldn't be recommended if they were no good. You'd find everyone would be having bad effects, and it wouldn't. I see people's lives change on them. I see people's lives change on them every day. I see people lose the symptoms that were causing them the most trouble. I see this every day. I see a huge number of people, obviously with intrusive thoughts still overriding, but it gets rid of some of the physical anxiety overriding. We have to get into the thinking when it comes to OCD, absolutely. But that is not to say that for many, the intrusive thoughts come down, the chronic anxiety comes down, the improved sleep, the better energy, all these things, right? If you just go on sort of celebrity stories, social media, YouTube stories, you'll hear people that'll say, I had clinical depression, I couldn't even function. The Rock says that. I couldn't even function, I had nothing, all these things. That for them, that may be their situation. I'm not denying that. But that doesn't work for everyone. You can't, there's plenty of stories like that. I just decided I was going to run an hour a day. I was just going to eat better. I was just going to break up with a girlfriend who wasn't getting on with me, and we were having a lot of problems, and I felt free, and then I changed my life and I concentrated on my work. Yeah, It's not as simple as that. If it was as simple as that, everyone's stories would be as simple as that in most cases, where they're not. So it's obviously, there's a lot more to it. Brains aren't simplist. It's not as simple as that. There is elements of simplicity in sort of ways in relation to fears and how we're approaching them, but they won't all come together just like that. So I think that is a very, very important point to realise that one, that meds is an important part of the journey for many. Two, it's nothing to do with you as a strength, as a weakness, whatever. It's just sometimes with certain brains, which is a lot of them, then meds make a huge difference. And why not do that when we've got it and we live at a time where that's there? So we've got to break down that stigma. And people hold those stigmas even when they think they don't. They still do. You see people talking, oh, I'm anti-med stigma and all this stuff. And then you watch how they approach their own meds. They're sort of like, they still view them as a bit weak, or when they get angry, they've got to get off. It's still there subtly, often. What other areas about meds do we need to cover? So watching out for the rush to get off them, which is a large problem. Sleep is one that can be an issue for people. When I was in my worst moments of OCD, age 21, 22, 23, no problems with sleep. I could sleep knowing that when I was utterly convinced I'd done something horrendous, I could still sleep, right? But then when I developed GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, but in the physical form where it was predominantly, I imagine the term generalized anxiety disorder is going to split into two. You have one which is more based of thoughts of, is this scary thing going to happen? Is that scary thing going to happen? And two, where it's more of a pphysical component, more physical symptoms, which mine was, without a prominent thought that I was scared of. And I imagine from a lot of research I've done over the years that disorder, how it's been viewed as generalized anxiety disorder, will split, and you'll have one which is more the thoughts and one which is more physical. Okay, they can both overlap, but I think it will go more like that. And when I had that, then I, for the first time, just overnight, boom, I started having sleeping problems, waking up a lot, waking up too early, feeling lethargic, feeling tired. All these wore off during the day, a lot of it in mid-afternoon. But they were still bloody annoying. They were wearing me down, making me extra tired. And I was really frustrated at this point because I thought, fucking hell, I've done so much bloody work on OCD, and I'm starting to have this, and my OCD's not so bad. And I've got that. Its brains can do different things. They're different for everyone. Different stories, different experiences, different things happen. Somebody who's never experienced ROCD suddenly develop ROCD at a certain time. Somebody who's never had a panic attack suddenly has a panic attack at a certain time. Then they turn it inwards. I'm not the kind of person who had a panic attack. How have I had a panic attack? Why is this happening to me? I never used to have these before. Or, it's with this talking on here, you guys are aware a lot of the time of all these kinds of things. So I'm speaking to you who's got enough of an idea of what's going on. But what happens when you're speaking to somebody who's got no idea? Then all of this is very new, and that's why we use this channel to speak to those people too, because you feel very alone. Oh God, I've just had to take meds. I felt so scared and so alone, and I did this, or I never took meds, or I took meds originally, then came off them for 3 years, and then I had to go back on them. How did that happen? Well, because OCD can latch in different ways. You can go great for years, and then bang, it latches. Did that to me many times. Thought I was completely recovered for years, and then boom, it got in another area, or just felt tighter, and I thought, God, what's happened? I've gone back to square one. That is the nature of what it does. Right. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about meds was benzos. You never want to consider long-term benzo use, no matter how shit you're feeling. I know they can be appealing because people think, oh, well, I can just stop those. I don't have to taper off them like with SSRIs and SNRIs. I can just take it when I need it. Yeah, but they're very addictive, hugely overprescribed, especially in America. And people are giving them out all the time. I could walk into a doctor this afternoon and just get a big dose of benzos, and it's like that. Benzos is so many people going through forums. Oh, you took a low dose. We're all right for years. People coming to me all the time. Have been on a low dose for 25 years. Coming off them sometimes is okay. Sometimes they're physical symptoms. Sometimes they have to go to rehab if they're on a high dose. You don't want to get involved in long-term benzos. long-term benzos is it's overprescribed. Jordan Peterson did a great video talking all about this, about the dangers of it and why it's overprescribed, how it happened to him. It's very easy. They're given out without people knowing what they are. People's prescriptions will say a type of benzo, and then they'll say go and have this for a while, and they don't get told, well, that's actually very dangerous. You could easily get latched into this, stuck on this for a while, because how the brain works is, if you look at addictions or anything, if, say for example, I have a good day today, and today's not a bad day, and I take a benzo, it might not be too bad. But let's say today my mum dies and I take a benzo. Well, my brain's going to quite easily link the feeling the worst I've ever felt to something pulling me back to feeling better. That's where most addictions start. It's the same as the people that get addicted to porn. They haven't got a partner, they're watching lots of porn, so they're already frustrated. Then they get that, then it replaces that, then it creates the addiction, the same as with gambling or any of these things. So you've got to look at, it's about trying to build resilience at the times where you need it most. You can easily get into a habit where you think, God, this is a hard time, I'll just reach for that benzo, and then that quickly, boom, 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 becomes a habit like that. So we're learning to be more resilient ourselves. That low frustration tolerance we're learning to improve, what Ellis talks about a lot in the books, learning to become more able to stand discomfort. I mean, I could feel a lot of discomfort right now, and I could come on here and still do this Instagram live, even when I've been feeling pretty shit, right? I could do that. Yeah. Now, I'm not talking about in relative to anxiety. I'm talking about that in relative to things in life. I've come on here and done Instagram lives on days when something bad's happened, maybe a personal thing or something. Someone's told me a really bad story of someone close to me or something like that. I can still come on because I think, well, you know what? It's going to feel a bit shit inside, but you can still do your job and you can still do things. But I wouldn't have been able to do that initially, because initially I would have thought, God, that's really hard. I need to take some time out. But you learn to build that like a muscle. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily come on here the day that something really bad has happened, like close loved ones passed away. But I'm saying in the scheme of things, you can learn to be able to deal with things and hold things together even when things are difficult, okay? And I think that's very important. You know, it's OCD sufferers are often good at, another thing that OCD sufferers are good at, putting on a face. People come into me and they say, how are you? And then they say, they're all good, they seem good. And then I say, are you really good? And then they say, no, I'm not really good. I'm struggling with my anxiety or OCD at the moment. But I have to get it out of them. But you normally get it out of them. It's normally quite easy to see, because when you speak to them, you can see what they're struggling, or you can see they're kind of vacant. I mean, it's quite easy to spot when someone's struggling from OCD when you know what to look for. You're normally looking for a sort of checked out look, like they're looking through a sort of bit of misted glass where they're sort of there, but they're normally sort of a bit like, they'll be like this. They'll be looking and talking, but they'll kind of, you can see they're internally focused on their thing in their head. That's where they are with that, because they're very much locked up. They're very much internalized, sort of caught backwards, stuck in their head, focused on the problem. And it's very much like that. You can always get a rough idea of that. And I think that's why it's very important for people to, when you ask them, how are you? They should talk about that and say, well, actually, I'm not feeling great. You know, if I wasn't feeling great, or I was stuck with something, I would look at it and I would think, and I would tell someone around me, and I'd say, someone in the groups, I've got a lot of great people in there that have been with me for a long time, and in the way our WhatsApp groups work is it was always free to talk about problems. I had a problem the other day that wasn't actually OCD related, and I spoke about it in the group, and I said, I've had a problem the other day, such and such has happened, and it was helpful, the feedback I got from people. But if I had an OCD problem, I would say in the group, I'd say, I've just caught on this, and there's this thing that I'm stuck on. And someone would say, yeah, you leave that there for the moment, whatever. You should always be in a position to be able to do that, okay? You don't want to put yourself in a position where you think, I can't do that, because that's dangerous. Even for me, that would be very dangerous, because I could think to myself, oh God, I've got to keep up appearances. I can't ever have a mistake, yeah? If I had a mistake that I couldn't fix, like I always say on here, sometimes I do get triggered for small periods, but they're never periods that I think, I really don't know what to do. I've got all the tools, I know what to do, and it never lasts too long. It would always go off, and it doesn't really happen too often. But I do have normal life problems that might want to talk them through, not because I haven't got the tools to deal with them, but it's easy. It's nice to have a perspective. I might have a situation where, look, there's lots of things that happen in human lives, different frustrations we have, different things that go wrong, and sometimes when you talk that through with somebody, you think, yes, I can see that, and it helps with that. And I think that's very important. And I think that it's, if we become more aware of how things in our life affect us mentally, and we learn to stand with them and learn to work through them ourselves, but also at the same time practice sort of where we can see sort of going through them will help us. There's lots of things that we go through. The way I run the company that I run is everything is very open. So everyone I work with and the people that work with us and in the company, we're very open about things. Someone will say, I'm not very happy about how this is working. What do you think about that? Oh, I think I've taken on too much work. Can I try this and try that? That's what I want it to be. I don't want it to be a place where it's very much sort of not listening to how people think. And that goes for me too. I say how I think about things. So I think I'm not like this, or this needs to change. And then that way we can all learn to be aware of how we're thinking, and it helps. Often a lot of problems happen in a lot of companies because people feel very stressed and can't talk about how stressed they are and things like that. And that can also happen from the top down. So there's someone who's the person who's running the company might think, I can't tell anyone that I'm stressed with something or a certain problem. And that can become a problem. So we always try and keep everything very open like that, so that any problems that anyone has, if anyone feels overworked or whatever, they can talk about that. And that's the same as a sort of family unit and how you go about your life. Being able to talk to your family and tell them how you're feeling. There's no awards. There's no awards for being brave-faced and feeling horrendous, okay? It helps you to become better and get a bit in terms of being more resilient to some degree, but then there's a limit. So you need to be able to talk about that, okay? You need to do that. You don't need to think, I've got to put on a brave face. But then there's the other side. You don't want to be talking about OCD all day long. Oh, can I talk about OCD? Can I relay my story to my parents? Can I tell them about my OCD? Can I tell them about my anxiety? Over and over and over and over and over and over. Because then you've got all those compulsions that are going on. It becomes a nightmare. So we need to learn to not. I can't remember the last time I've spoken about OCD to my family. It must be 8-9 years or something like that. Because it wouldn't. Well, one, because I haven't been struggling, but it became a compulsion. I used to do it all the time when I was stuck before. When I was stuck before, I used to do it all the time. I used to be talking about how I was feeling, telling my mum and my dad, oh, I'm feeling like this, and it's not going, and I've got this new thought, and then trying to reassure, what do you think about this? If you did this, how would you feel? And it became like that. I'd never do that. Never do that now. But it's understandable that we can do that in the past. It's very understandable that we can do that and get into that habit of doing that. What other things? I think it's very important to not view things as like a finish line, as a kind of competition. Even Claire Weeks, who wrote the great book Self-Help for Your Nerves, which is on our reading list, she talks about how she used to wake up startled some night in panic. I sometimes get that. Okay, I do sometimes get that. It does sometimes happen. It's rare. It doesn't happen that often. And the reason I draw attention to it is often when I talk about certain symptoms, people think, oh my God, if he gets that means I'm always going to get it. Yeah, but I don't get it often. I get it every few months or something like that. Claire Weeks used to get that. I don't think there's anything that I could work on in the day in terms of my thinking to stop that, okay? There's nothing that I could think of was I scared of. There wasn't. If there was an exposure I could do, I would have done it. If there was a belief that I couldn't see, I would have seen it. There was nothing. It was just, I'm sure, genetic of some degree. That just happens. Didn't always used to get that. Sometimes get it now. Claire Weeks used to get that. She says she didn't care about it. It passed, same as me. Zilch effect on my life, but I still do get that on occasion. What other ones? Albert Ellis talks about in his book, where he talks about his life, the book on his life, he talks about how he used to get anxiety when he was going into hospital operations, even when he was at a point of unconditional self and life acceptance. Now, how does that work? Well, if you watched me in lots of situations, you would think he rarely gets mad about that. he's very calm, even in situations people think, God, you're kind of distant from things. Because I genuinely feel like that. There's not much that bothers me on an anxious level, really, in many situations. Like I never really sort of think there's something that's so overwhelming. It doesn't ever get to that point. It just doesn't raise from that, because I view life very rationally, where I think, well, I'm not going to be here forever. Tried my best in those situations. Let's roll with those things. Worst that can happen is this. So it's always relatively calm. But, like Albert Ellis says, he was very calm, and invented unconditional self-love and other acceptance. Albert Ellis talks about how when he was going in on a hospital bed into an operation for his stomach, he was very, very anxious, and he was trying to calm himself down. Well, that's going to happen. If I was going in for an operation, my triggers, I'll tell you what my triggers would be. My triggers would be certain health ones in hospitals. I'm not the biggest fan of hospitals in general anyway. When it's a procedure that I've had a few times or whatever, different things, not anxious at all. Like last year before last, I broke my elbow. When I broke it, I didn't complain about it, wasn't anxious about it one bit at all, despite nearly getting run over in the process of when I broke it. Because I fell off my bike at night in the middle of a golf course, which wasn't a great place, and cars were going by on the road. And when I did that injury, I didn't complain about it. I thought, it's a broken elbow, it's not really going to be any problems. You have to take a few pain meds, maybe, roll with that, whatever happens, and go with that. And that's like that. And other bones that I've broken over the years, the same, never really worried about it. In the past, I would have thought, oh, what if this med gives me a reaction and I go mad or go psychotic, or what happens if I have to have another thing, or what happens when they do this, they then find another thing that's broken or injured or got cancer or whatever. I'm not mad on... Someone said to me today, well, actually that did happen to me 5-6 years ago. 5-6 years ago, they found that one of my tonsils was one of the tonsils was enlarged constantly all the time. And so I was concerned, because that can be a sign of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the doctor was concerned, and then the specialist was concerned because it'd been there for 8 months. So there's quite a few factors there that had me quite concerned. I didn't sleep the best with that one. Okay, I could accept, I'm going to die and be at peace. I could die and could be at peace with that, but I didn't want to die. And genetically, the anxiety would raise up. It was waking me up quite a few times during the night during that time. It wasn't the easiest with that one. The OCD had really latched on and was quite convinced that I was going to die, because that's what OCD does. That wasn't great. When other times weren't great, I'm trying to think. Trying to think what other ones weren't great. It's not many. It's only health ones it tries to get me on. There's not many other situations. Loved ones ill is hard. I find that hard one sometimes to do. My sister was very ill at one point, and I was worried about her. And when she was ill, I thought to myself, could I lose her? Could I not? I was very anxious at first. I got to the point in my head where even if I lost her, she's not going to be around forever. And it brought that sense of calm, so I didn't get really anxious. But I did notice things like just sleep, the disturbances, and just anxious stomach that wouldn't go, even though I was leaving it there. If you'd spoken to me, you wouldn't have seen it. You wouldn't have seen it so much that... you'd have seen that I was a bit anxious, but to me, I'd sound calm, but you could see it was there because I was going through that at the time. That wasn't the easiest. Those ones is tricky. Those ones can be tricky. I mean, look, physical symptoms, if I didn't have genetic anxiety and that same sister situation had happened, would I have had those physical symptoms? Probably not. I mean, I notice people come into me that have physical symptoms relating to anxiety that... they're funny really, because you'll get someone gets like a familial sort of tremor in the hand just tremors a bit, not as much as that necessarily, and then when they're anxious it might tremble as much as that can happen. When they're excited they can become like that. So that's genetic on some level. Okay, the anxiety's there, but it's like some people have a genetic response more than others. So when that sister situation was happening, I wasn't really bad. Like you'd never see me not be able to do anything. I'd still do everything, still everything functioning always fine, but it was there. It was just there. So that would do that. But if it'd been me in the past, Jesus, I'd be looking for reassurance. Oh my God, I need to check. I need to go to the doctor. I need to check all these things. I'd be over and over and over doing that because I wouldn't have known how to calm that cycle down. And it does that with anxiety disorders. You'll notice that. Look, you're not going to. Don't try and achieve the ridiculous. Don't try and think, I'm going to have no anxiety at all. I'm going to be completely at peace, never have a problem. Yeah, that might be possible if you're living like a Buddhist monk. You're barely doing much. But if you've got family, running a company, all the other things that go with life, doesn't have to be that. You can just be working in your job or doing anything can have stress involved. Going on holiday can have stress involved with getting there and all the problems. There could be a stresses. You won't necessarily get anxious, but you're never going to have complete internal peace. You become more rational, less disturbs you. But with the genetics that are most likely involved with OCD, GAD and so on, you're probably going to notice it a bit more on certain situations. Yes, you don't notice it, because you don't notice it chronically at all. You can start to feel very invincible, but you will notice it other times. You will. You could bring me any person who thinks, I'm completely fearless, put you in a situation that you will start to fear. If you knew that you were about to get motor neurone disease, and it was very highly likely, and you're in your 30s or 40s, even the bravest looking characters are going to be anxious. If you're going to prison for 40 years, or you're not, and you're on trial, bravest of characters are going to be pretty anxious. It's not. People try and achieve this sort of unachievable with these things, especially when you watch things like David Goggins and stuff that's sort of really all about this. You go for it and you can do anything like that. But I mean, if you brought David Goggins into me, I'm pretty sure I would think that there was some things that he's running away from and some disturbances and some things like that. Although his attitude's been great at achieving a lot, there's still some things that he looks like very strongly held irrational beliefs keeping him stuck. But it's not to say it's amazing what he does and all his mindset is fantastic, but even the bravest looking characters are going to have problems. You could find a guy who's, and I see this all the time, I work with people that are that work in the military or work in police force, or work with people in sort of SWAT team in the police or in serious combat situations where they're shot at regularly and nearly killed and captured and all sorts. And they've got OCD. And they worry about one thing, but they don't worry about other things. I was speaking to a guy who said, I've been shot at by a machine gun, but then I'm worried about my ROCD. And you think, how's that even possible? The guy's just about to die. Because of how it's latched, it does that. You see that. Guy will come in, he's like motor racing all the time, not fear of dying, but scared about some OCD relating to existential OCD. So he will do that, and I can very much relate to that myself, because there were so many times where I felt not scared in so many areas of my life. I'm not talking about in relation to the things they're doing, but I was saying that it latches to those things. And that's what OCD is like. And that's the same as what I was talking about with very brave people. A brave guy might be in bits if his daughter got sick. I see that. I was speaking to a guy only a couple of weeks ago whose daughter had died of cancer at 5 years old. And he... that wasn't in a work situation, that was actually in a restaurant. I was sitting down having dinner, and a guy sat down I think he was on a date, on one of his dates, and he sat down at a table next to me, and he got speaking to me, and I was speaking to him back and forth, and he was telling me that he'd lost his daughter. He's lost his daughter of about 5 or 6 years old to a brain cancer only about 6 months ago. And he was very unstable. I didn't want to go into the whole I tried to help him a bit there, but I didn't go into too much detail. But seeing how upset he was and how he was trying to get on with his life and was planning all the things he wanted to do with his own life, but he was talking about how much trouble it brought him and obviously naturally, and how difficult it was. And you could see he was really struggling. And he was a guy that was sort of anti-therapy or anything like that. And you look at that situation, and the guy, if you looked at him and I said, what do you think of that guy, and you didn't know that story, you'd think, he looks like a guy that doesn't worry about anything. But it doesn't matter. There's always something. It involves children, involves your loved ones and stuff like that, you can get very disturbed very quickly without realizing, or it can be subtle. I mean, I was in a very rational position at the time when my sister wasn't well, and I thought to myself, there's not much going to disturb me, and then it caught me, and I thought, fuck, I hope this thing sorts itself out, because at the moment trying to sleep is not super easy with this, because I constantly feel like I need to be on guard for her, and that's what happens. Life is not a situation where you're going to understand it all. Everyone is going through life, trying new things, trying different things. You look at Elon Musk, for example. I think he's an amazing genius character who I admire a lot and think is amazing what he's doing. I'm sure he's thinking in his head, what if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? We'll try and fix this might not. Of course, because as a human, people are going to do that. You make decisions and do things, but you're not going to have it all right. We're all adjusting and learning through different things in life, and what works and what doesn't work, and trying to put that all together for our own lives to make those work. And what I do here wouldn't be here if it didn't come from a place of pain and struggle. This wasn't built out of a place of happiness. This was all built from a place of a lot of pain. If someone had said to me, and it's true, it's not something that I'm saying lightheartedly. If someone had said to me in the years that I was struggling with OCD, look, I can book you in today and have your hand chopped off and you won't have OCD. Will you sign up now? I'd have put my hand out in 2 seconds. I'm not just saying that. People who've got OCD know that. I genuinely would have. Now, okay, would I have definitely done that in that situation? Hard to say until you're in it, but I would have thought so. It's how it felt. Because OCD is, it was a very difficult time, and it was very challenging, as we all know. You wouldn't go into doing this for a full-time career if that hadn't pushed you to that place to do that. So that's where it comes from. That's where all this was built on. It was built on a place of pain. It was built on a place of not knowing what happiness felt like on a day-to-day basis, looking forward to when it was raining because then I didn't feel like I was missing out on life, not wanting to go on holiday because I couldn't be happy there because I was in so much difficulty with OCD and anxiety. So that's what the life was like, and you guys know that well because you've been in these positions with it. But I was in a position, and I came from a position where I had a great life, and life was really good outside of OCD. But in OCD, it sucks everything. You could be in the best night of your life with your friends, with everything going well, and it'd get you. That's where it used to sabotage me most. It used to sabotage me most in places like the nightclub, and be sitting down having drinks and stuff with that, and it would just be in there all the time. If only they knew the chronic guilt, you're the worst for this is the worst thing you could have ever done, all this kind of stuff. So it's going to naturally go for all of that, and that's what it does. That's what OCD does. So yes, you've got to remember it comes from a place like that, and I don't want to always put across when I do these videos talking about when you come on here and you talk about these things, you're talking always from a position of the past. So it's always a position that's kind of a sort of a position where you're in a comfortable position now. So it's good to go back into those problems and to look at those situations and speak about them so that you see that I'm a human as well, not just a robot who's rational, but that this does come from that place. This does come from seeing and feeling all that stuff so that you understand that, because otherwise we sometimes try and achieve what's not achievable. We think, I'm going to become this kind of robot that's not scared. I see how Rob is with these things, and I'll just completely that. It took time to get there, and I'm not saying that I'm bulletproof. Those, like I said, that situation with my sister, I didn't sleep that great when that was going on. That wasn't great. If you were wheeling me into an operation like Albert Ellis when he was having major stomach surgery, that ain't great. I remember having an endoscopy when I had esophagitis. I had such bad anxiety. The anxiety had been basically developed. I had gastroesophageal reflux disease, which I inherited from my father, so I had that anyway. And basically what happened was I was doing a lot of weight training. I was eating a lot of food that probably wasn't healthy at the time, and I started getting a lot of acid reflux. I left it. I was using Rennies from the counter in the shop. That didn't really work like PPIs would, omeprazole and stuff that I was later on. So it burnt all the esophagus. It was such bad esophagitis, so it was all swollen. I used to choke on food. Food used to go down and get stuck. I used to thought I was going to die because I couldn't swallow the food properly. And so then I was like, shit, this is really serious. I could barely eat. I was pretty much eating soup at the time. I had very bad stomach problems. I had that in the family anyway. My father had various surgeries on his own stomach. And so I thought, right, I've got to go to a specialist for this. So I went to the London Gastroenterology Centre, and they did an endoscopy, which was horrible because, again, I had a fear of being sedated at the time. So I was very worried about being sedated. And because of this fear of being sedated, I decided I'll go back to work that night. So I'll go and have this procedure without sedation. So I just had a light spray in the mouth that sort of numbs the pain but doesn't knock you out. And then they did the endoscopy without sedation, which I had the esophagitis. So when they put that big tube that goes all the way down your esophagus, that was so swollen. So I vomited like 20 times on that. That was a horrible experience. And then I took the omeprazole after that and recovered from that. Those kind of times, I wouldn't say, I wasn't in the best place with my anxiety anyway then, but I wasn't great in those times. That was like a pretty horrible procedure. I didn't want to have that. I was very anxious during the procedure. It felt really horrible. I was very anxious about eating at that time because I thought I was going to choke. It was quite a few times along that I thought I should call an ambulance because I was in a really bad way. So those kind of times, although I was better, I was getting better. My anxiety at that time had some real peaks, but I was much better overall. I was much calmer in general. So if you look at those things, those situations, you're not trying to build yourself to be bulletproof, all right? You're gonna have different things that are gonna scare you, and you're gonna have different things. I've seen people that are great position and then have some trauma and then feel derailed, but then once they get on top of things step by step, that all comes back together. So they don't feel too disheartened if you do feel that sort of setback or like you've been a bit derailed. That's part of the journey. It kind of happens with what we're going through. Right, I think that covers a lot. I wanted to talk in detail about this. I'm going to come on here and do a lot of talks in detail about different sections that I think are really important to share so people can see from those struggles, what it's like. With OCD, it's a very lonely journey where we've all been in and we've been stuck for a long time. And with me, because I've been better for so long, I forget what it was like to be stuck like that and what it felt like and the experiences involved with that. So it's good to come on here and share that and to talk about that so that you can see the difficult things that I went through with it too. Now, let's have a look at some of these questions. I'm sure there's a lot here, so I'm going to have to go back a bit. Let's have a look. How do you deal with constant waves of anxiety and despair? Well, the constant waves don't tend to be random. But you think they're random. They don't tend to. There tends to be something that you're scared of that's causing that cycle. And that's what's fueled it. But to you, they feel random because you can't spot what that thing is. Anxiety and depression has made me an alcoholic. I hate it. Well, the anxiety and depression in of itself hasn't made you an alcoholic. The anxiety and depression genetically set you up in a position where it was possible to develop alcoholism. So that's where people with OCD are often more likely to develop anxiety disorders because they're already in a position of disturbance, which then they want to escape. So when the bond is created by the brain seeing, alcohol gets me out of this position, alcohol makes me feel better. So if once it experiences that again and again and again, then it wants to keep chasing that because it sees it as a way out. Can OCD have a paranoid side to it? That's a fear of schizophrenia. That's a reassurance question. You're scared, most likely here, of being stuck in a sort of psychosis, schizophrenia. Watch our YouTube channel talking all about schizophrenia-related OCD, fear of going crazy, all that kind of stuff, because we do cover that in quite a lot of detail. Worst place explaining it, nobody gets it. We've got a video talking about that. We think that we need people to understand it. You don't need people to understand it. You don't need their approval. It feels like you do need it, but you don't need it. It would be nice to have it, but even if you don't get it, that's okay. That's an important thing to realise. Which meds are the most effective? You don't want to spend ages reading review sites and all about that. You want to speak to your GP, discuss a route with medication. You want to then work with them, explaining what symptoms you're having and looking at the best route. You're going to find so many people with different responses to all different meds, and it's all going to be different and varied from everybody. So instead of specifically trying to carve out a route yourself through reviews and stuff like that, it's going to be very bumpy and all over the place. Speak to your doctor. It's the best route. If they're putting you on higher meds all the time, that isn't the best route. They can often do that because they can't calm down the generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, so they keep putting you on more and more meds. At that point, what you want to do is you want to say to them, no, I don't want to keep going on higher meds. I want to go to a level where it's enough with less side effects and see how I go from there. But the rest you want to be discussing with your doctor. Fear of how long I need to be on meds, people's question. Even if you're not long on for years and years, decades, it's not the end of the world. Plenty of people are. So it's not that big a deal. Good to hear all the messages from people that have had great benefits with medication. Just reading through these questions at the moment. Sorry if I've gone quiet, just having to go through those today. Haven't got my trusted assistant Mom in to help out. He's not here right now, so I have to go through all of these. Slight relapse and slight anxiety is not a big deal. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter. Actually, do you know what? There's a question here I'm going to draw attention to because I've been meaning to do this, and you might this will be interesting for people watching because it's in the next comment here. How do you deal with slight relapse? Don't worry about slight relapses. Work with it as best you can, but don't be too frightened of if you've just had a bit of anxiety symptoms. Work through things bit by bit. Right. Next question. Next question is a troll that comes on OCD pages, mine and other people's pages, and likes to post comments saying things like, I think such and such person in the YouTube video is sexy, I want to have sex with them, fuck this person, fuck that person. Now, the problem is, and why I'm drawing this attention, is obviously trolls are a nuisance. I've written to this person a few times saying, because I've had to block 20 accounts of theirs, and many people in the OCD community have had to do the same to them, saying like, why do you keep sending these things? Because obviously to them, the natural reaction would be so annoying. Why do they do this? It's very childish, it's very stupid, but they must get some feeling from it. So I decided to approach trolls from a position of acceptance and looking at what is it that's bothering them? What is it that's got them into a place where they're starting to think of things like this? And what happens is people build up in their minds views of, this guy has said that when I've spoken to him, that he's just having a laugh, that there's nothing wrong with that we should accept anything if people do these kinds of things because we're an acceptance channel, so they can behave like that. That's very true. I do accept him as an individual, accept him completely as an individual, as a human. He's got value as being a human. But what I'm trying to look at is, why is it productive? Why is it helpful to your life to cause abuse to people and accounts? And to do these things, what benefit you get out of is improving your life. Will you look back on your deathbed and think to yourself, I'm so glad I trolled accounts? Because trolls don't really get much sort of social status. Like, no one thinks, oh yeah, I know this troll, he's a great guy, he's a great character, he's really charismatic. They don't. They normally picture them as sort of guys in bed, in their pajamas, on a laptop, trying to have a sense of power. That's not to criticize you. That is to demonstrate where it tends to come from. This situation where you're trying to get a sense of power. It's never a braver position is if you wanted to have a discrepancy with somebody and you had a problem with someone, would be either to ring them or to speak to them face to face. That would be the bravest. But these kind of keyboard warrior-like antics aren't very helpful, because they are always those situations. We know those situations. It's always the darkly lit room, on the computer, getting angry with somebody, having a go at them for a brief feeling of some power. But what power? Insulting people that are in the mental health community, particularly with that comment there, insulting a girl who's had mental health struggles her whole life, who's trying to do stuff for OCD awareness, and then coming on and then trying to attack them because just for the sake of that. What benefit is that? But now wait, because naturally we can be a bit, when we look at those situations, we first have to outline that it's not on, that it's a wrong behaviour, and you do definitely want to change that. Two is that we don't want to stand for it. That's why we block all your comments on walls, and so do all the other people in the OCD community. And thirdly is looking at, yes, you can accept yourself, but you've got to look at your behaviours. You've got to look at what you're doing. It's not helping your life. It's certainly not helping other people. It could really upset a lot of people. It's probably it's very unproductive in the OCD community. And if you're doing those kind of behaviours, think about the behaviours you must be doing in your life. You must have loads of these negative attributes that are really affecting and holding back your life. Now, this may come from a place of feeling inferior or less than, which obviously is not. You've got value from being human. But you want to look at those behaviours and think, where are they getting you? Like, why do you want to troll people? What's the benefits of trolling people? Just the other day, one of your comments that trolled somebody was on somebody who'd just written a recovery story. And you put a comment on their post saying something like, I want to have sex with your girlfriend. And the person had only just written a recovery story and had been struggling for 5 years on their own. And it was their first moment speaking about that. Naturally, at first, as a human, I was a bit annoyed about that. I thought, God, that's so out of order to do that to somebody who's just shared their recovery story. But to you, even getting this attention maybe from me in this video, that might be a bonus. But what you want to think about is what are those beliefs underneath? Because naturally, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed thinking it's not very nice to the people in the community that are really struggling that this goes on. Because we have to block your account all the time and you keep doing it, it's a bit frustrating. But underneath it, you've got to think, well, where's this getting me in my life? Because there are no trolls that are sitting in the room that you think I really want to aspire to. It is usually those situations. Sitting in the dark on the laptop. You want to think, where's this getting me in my life? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Because being a troll is not a goal for anyone. It's definitely not. So you want to really think about, where is this leading in positive ways? If there's an area of your life you don't like, you want to work on changing it. But trolling people on mental health groups that are writing stories when they're vulnerable or just shared something, it's not the best way to go. So I wanted to bring that out, because otherwise what happens is people send me messages saying, like, I was reading something, someone's written this comment and I've on my post, and I say, well, we delete them all the time, but unfortunately with these trolls, they get a kick out of going and setting up new accounts, going on Instagram and keep redoing it. So we do the best we can, but it does still happen. It's not, with that troll thing, just to put that to bed, it's not just a case of just kids. I've spoken to that specific troll and messaged them, and they're definitely not a kid, but they keep doing it because there's a reason that they do it. There's obviously a psychological reason. We can accept it, but at the same time, when you're running a company like what we're doing with OCD recovery, of course, if the person was coming to me and wanted to learn to adjust to how to do that, it's a slightly different reaction from acceptance and understanding. But in this context, I'm a bit frustrated about these trolling poor people. From a rational level, of course, it's calm, it's not a big deal, but in the scheme of things. But I'm saying, on a normal sort of short-term basis, it's frustrating and sad for the people who share their stories and then get the troll comments. So I wanted to bring awareness to it, because otherwise, often what happens is you leave these comments on here and you don't bring them up and do that. And what I do is all about being open and explaining how we think about things and what things we don't think on. Trolls is, from a rational level, is one thing. From a personal level, I think it's something that it's a very sad part of social media, where people, it's the sort of least brave thing you can do. If you've got a problem or something, say it to someone. And picking on people with mental health is pretty low. So obviously I think it's a bit out of order to those people sharing their recovery stories. I think that's covered most of the topics on here that I wanted to cover. I made it a bit of a longer Instagram today to cover lots of different sections. I think if there's anything else that you want me to cover in relation to OCD, just DM me, just send it in the messages, and I will cover it. We do tend to cover most of the things in the group calls as well that we do, as well as these Instagram lives, the YouTube things. And I think that's important. It's about being real, talking about how we think and how we feel with these things, as well as with acceptance, as well as learning from each other different things. And we talk about everything on here. Like I just said with that troll thing, it's anything. You can ask me anything in here about OCD, my own OCD. You can ask me anything about the people we work with OCD and different things. You can ask about anything. We're open. And that's what I want these Instagram lives to always be about, because that's what it is about. Even that troll, if that situation was, I messaged him and said, if he's got a problem with the troll thing, he can speak to me about it and I can help him with that. But he doesn't want to, as you can tell by those comments. He's still trying to get the attention from it because it brings him some benefit. There is a benefit to him. He brings the benefit of feeling there's some kind of power feeling or something like that it gives him that he hasn't got at the moment in other areas of his life. So it does that. So that's an area that he should be looking at. Or she. I'm not going to generalize here. Guys, great to have you all here on this Instagram live. I will be back on later in the week covering some different topics on OCD in detail, looking at schizophrenia or OCD. We're going to be doing religious OCD. We're going to be doing what other ones? Suicide OCD at some points, a topic that doesn't get covered a lot, especially difficult to talk about on social media, because the problem with suicide OCD is that it gets often, it's ridiculous. This is another ridiculous thing, like with that troll thing. It's another ridiculous thing that happens with online. If you talk about that, people then say people then will say things like, the other day I put up a post that was talking about suicide OCD, and someone reported it. Said, you can't talk about that, that's dangerous to people. It wasn't dangerous to people. We were talking about suicide OCD. And even before the post, there was a big long post informing, saying, just to let you know, this is not talking about suicide, this is talking about suicide OCD. Hence why on social media, POCD and suicide OCD get covered so little, because people report posts about them because they don't understand them and get reported. So then the people suffering from them don't get the content because of how they get hidden. So I don't think that is a good thing. That's another problem. There's little problems like that people often don't see that actually go on behind the scenes. That's one of the reasons that topics of suicide OCD gets covered so little, because people are too scared often to write about it because of how it gets interpreted wrong. And it even gets interpreted wrong in the OCD community. People put up a post about it, and then loads of people in the community say, oh, no, I thought this, or you shouldn't say this, or whatever. It's very difficult. I do it in all of our group calls and our Skype group calls. I cover it in a lot of detail, that topic, because we're going to do one specifically on that. But in Instagram Lives, it can be tricky because, not in Instagram Live so much, but in Instagram Stories posts, because people misinterpret them and then say it was saying something else, and so on and so on. Guys, great to speak to you all. I will see you on the next Instagram Live. Take it easy. See you later.